Ya entramos, ¿no?
Distinguished delegates, good afternoon. Let me extend a warm welcome to all participants as we begin the third part of the third working group session of the FMCP, and in particular to the representatives of the 11 parties that will undergo the FMCP this afternoon: France, Italy, Latvia, Lithuania, Sweden, Argentina, Chile, Costa Rica, Ecuador, Uruguay, and Mexico. First, maybe we'll begin the session, but before we begin, I would like to briefly recall the importance of maintaining a respectful and constructive atmosphere in line with the UNFCCC Code of Conduct, which applies throughout our work today. Let me once again briefly outline the modalities for the working group session. Each party will be invited to deliver an introductory statement. The statements of the first 5 parties undergoing the FMCP will be delivered one after another. We will then conduct a question and answer session combined for these parties. We will then hear the introductory statements of the next 6 parties, followed again by a combined question and answer session. To request the floor, please raise your flag. I will give you the floor by referring to the party name. Please press the speaker button or your microphone and state which party or parties under FMCP your question is directed to, then lower your flag. Please keep your intervention brief to allow broad participation. You are welcome to take the floor again later, time permitting, and further exchanges are possible in the informal FMCP dialogues tomorrow at lunchtime. We kindly ask all participants to remain within the scope of the FMCP as outlined by the MPGs. Parties under the FMCP may indicate if they consider a question outside its scope and may choose to respond at their discretion. If a response is to be provided by a remotely connected expert, please announce them before inviting them to intervene. Once all parties have had the opportunity to respond, we will proceed to the next round. When time is running short, I will call for a final list of parties wishing to raise questions, and those parties will be given the floor to raise their questions, but parties under the FMCP will be invited to provide written answers to these outstanding questions after the session. In addition, parties under the FMCP may also choose to provide written answers at any point during the session, for instance, where further information is needed. The Secretariat will upload those answers on the FMCP session webpage. The FMCP session will be broadcast live, and the recording will be made available on the FMCP session webpage after the event. We will hear the party statements in the order outlined in the schedule on the FMCP webpage. And with that, I'll move to the party's statement of the first group of parties. I would now like to invite France to make an introductory statement. The statement will be delivered by Ms. Diane Semiu, Director of Climate Energy Efficiency and Air Quality, Directorate General for Energy and Climate Ecological Transition Ministry. Ms. Semiu, you have the floor.
Dear chairs, dear colleagues, I'm very pleased to take part in this first FMCP session to present France's first biennial transparency report. My introduction will focus on three aspects. The first one, I will let you know where we are in terms of emission reduction and our targets in terms of for 2030 and 2050. I will then focus on our electrification plan and how it is key for us to break free from our dependency on fossil fuels. And finally, I will present how we're taking responsibility, not just for our territorial emissions, but also for the emissions associated with the products that we import. So first point, where we are in terms of emissions. Emissions in France have gone down by a third since 1990, with an acceleration in the decrease since 2017. We have an objective to reduce our emissions by half by 2030, and then reach carbon neutrality by 2050. This means that our emissions have to go down by 5% per year, which is a big challenge. And the main driver for us to achieve this objective is through electrification. We expect that it will account for 40% of our emission reduction by 2050. So I will now focus on this plan and why electrification is so crucial for us. The first reason, of course, is decarbonization. In France, our electricity is 95% decarbonized. And so it's the greatest way for us to reduce our fossil fuel emissions. The second reason is for energy sovereignty. In France, we still use 60% of fossil fuels in our energy mix, and we import 99% of these fossil fuels. It cost us 70 billion euros, and that's in a good year. It's more sometimes, and it makes us vulnerable to energy crisis. We have one every 4 years on average, and it has a direct impact on the daily lives of our citizens. And so this is why there is such great determination from President Macron to the Prime Minister to all ministers, but really this is a whole of society effort to break free from our dependency on fossil fuels. And so we have an objective to completely phase out coal by 2030, phase out oil by 2045, and phase out gas by 2050. And so that we will no longer be at the mercy of geopolitical events. And so our strategy to do so is to replace, whenever possible, fossil fuel by electricity, which we produce in abundance in France. Last year, we exported the equivalent of the consumption of Belgium. And we're targeting, in particular, the industry sector, the building sectors, and the transport sector. To give you a little more detail on the building sector, for instance, the focus on heat pumps. We have an objective to install 1 million heat pumps a year by 2030, and we have already banned the installation of oil boilers, whether in new or existing buildings, and from next year it will also be forbidden to install gas boilers in new buildings, for instance. And the last point I wanted to share with you is on carbon footprint. In France, half of our carbon footprint is linked to the emissions that we import through the products that we consume. And for the first time in our new climate strategy, national climate strategy, which will be adopted in July, we have set a target of reducing our footprint. For the first time, I believe France is the first country to do so, that we're really taking responsibility for all of our emissions, and we have an objective to reduce by about 75% our footprint by 2050. And of course, this is not something that we can do alone. This is something that we need to do in collaboration with all of our commercial partners and all of the international community. And so this is why we're very dedicated to international cooperation and climate finance. We have committed to providing 6 billion euros per year over 2021 to 2025, including 1/3 for adaptation. And over the past decade, France's climate finance has more than doubled. So this is what I wanted to share with you, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, France. I would like now to invite Italy to make an introductory statement. The statement will be delivered by Ms. Federica Fricano, UNFCCC Focal Point and Director of Division, Italian Ministry of the Environment and Energy Security. Ms. Fricano, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, colleague. First of all, let me say it's a real pleasure to be here today with you and share our experience in the framework of our first biannual transparency report for this session. We attach great value to this multilateral exercise. We believe that through transparency and the open sharing of our success as well as our most complex challenge, we have the opportunity to collaborate actively with the international community. Learning from others' best practices and sharing our own technical expertise is the key to accelerate global climate action. This process is the primary mechanism for triggering dynamics of capacity building and mutual learning, fostering a culture of accountability that strengthens the global response to climate crisis. Italy's climate action is deeply integrated and synergic with the ambition goals of the European Union, embedded in the EU nationally determined contribution, which sets a legally binding economic-wide target to reduce the EU domestic level net greenhouse gas emission by at least 55% by 2030 compared to 1990 levels under the Fit for 55 framework. At the EU level, 34% reduction was already achieved in 2022, and our eyes is already fixed on the 2040 target, which outlines a 90% net reduction, including the use of 5% international high-quality credit, moving steadily towards complete climate neutrality by 2050. This legal framework provides predictability for investors, drive innovation, and guarantee that our national trajectory is fully aligned with the global goal of limiting warming by 1.5. Looking at the historical trajectory of our greenhouse gas emission from 1990 to 2022, a trend of progressive and structural decline clearly emerged, particularly after the peak in 2005. This outcome is direct result of adopting national policies and measures embedded in the European framework on energy efficiency and renewable energy, providing that economic development can be successfully decoupled from carbon emissions. The validated data demonstrate the efficacy of our action. In 2022 alone, the combined effect of implemented measures across energy, transport, industrial processes, agriculture, and waste resulted in 57.4 million tons of CO2 equivalent, of a cut of 57.4 million tons of CO2 equivalent. Decarbonize the energy systems remains the key challenge for reducing emission in Italy, with energy accounting for a staggering 81.8% of total national emission in 2022. Within this energy macro sector, the criticality of transport stands out with extreme clarity, accounting for 26.7% of total energy emission. Transport constitutes the single largest emission source within the Italian energy sector, surpassing even energy industries. While other industrial or power generation sectors show a marked and steady contraction, the transport sector demonstrates strong resilience to reduction. Both the scenario with existing measure and the one with additional measure indicate that the transport emission curve requires massive, innovative, and structural interventions to decline significantly between now and 2040 and beyond. It is evident that achieving our challenge 2030 targets and subsequent climate neutrality by 2050 will largely depend on our ability to successfully tackle mobility through the decarbonization of road transport, shifting to public and rail transit, boosting logistical efficiency, and integrating clean energy carriers. However, mitigation is only one side of the coin. As a Mediterranean country, Italy is recognized climate hotspot, facing severe and immediate impact that require equal determination on resilience. In this regard, as highlighted by our national platform for adaptation to climate change developed by our National Environmental Agency, ISPRA, which experts are all around me. Adaptation must be understood as an ongoing process aimed at reducing the vulnerability of natural and socio-economic systems, increasing their resilience by fully exploiting the opportunity that might arise, and building the entire framework upon a solid foundation of scientific knowledge, data, and continuous monitoring climate impact. We cannot manage if we don't measure. Hence, tracking climate vulnerability across our diverse ecosystem and infrastructure is crucial for transforming policy into effective localized action. Italy does not only implement the Paris Agreement at home, but supports other countries to progress on climate action. We actively support developing countries in implementing their NDC, NAPs, and climate objectives, and demonstrate progress from previous efforts in providing and mobilize climate finance. From about $800 million USD provided in 2015, in biennium 2015 and 2016, Italy increased its climate finance, providing $1.91 billion USD in 2021 and 2022 through both bilateral and multilateral channels. Italy constantly contributes to key multilateral climate funds, including the Green Climate Fund, the GF, and the Fund for Responding to Loss and Damage, and to a wide range of multilateral agencies and development banks. Most of our climate finance is delivered in grants, maintaining a balance between adaptation and mitigation overall. Italy provides information on grant equivalent values of our loans and used a current methodology of reporting climate finance throughout the period, making our figure comparable over time. We are fully committed to transparency in reporting our climate finance and will continue in our efforts to improve transparency over time. The data confirm that we are on the right path, but the pace must be accelerated. Italy reaffirmed its full commitment within the European and international framework. We are scaling up our investment in green technology, modernizing our grid infrastructure, and streamlining regulatory pathway to ensure that renewable energy deployment can meet our ambition. We stand ready to face the crucial challenge of hard-to-abate sectors like transport, and we are equally ready to share our solution and collaborate with all of you. We firmly believe that only through a continuous exchange of expertise, robust institutional capacity building, and a sincere spirit of mutual learning can the international community translate Britain commitments into tangible reality of the planet. Italy has a long-lasting commitment to international cooperation, focusing on institutional strengthening arrangement to serve as a foundation for the ETF reporting and driving capacity building initiative to boost country-level technical expertise, ensuring that no country is left behind in this transparency journey. So thank you very much for your attention, and we, of course, will welcome any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Italy. I would now like to invite Latvia to make introductory statements. This statement will be delivered by Aiga Grasmain, Director of the Climate Policy Department at the Ministry of Climate and Energy of the Republic of Latvia. Ms. Grasmain, you have the floor.
Thank you. Distinguished Vice Chair, dear colleagues. It's an honor for Latvia to participate in this facilitative multilateral consideration of progress and to present our contribution to the implementation of the Paris Agreement. Latvia is geographically located in northeastern part of Europe, and we have 4 seasons, including hot and rainy summers and cold winters. For Latvia, the first biennial transparency report is a key milestone. It marks the first reporting cycle, and it provides opportunity to present in a transparent way our progress, challenges, and next steps. The enhanced transparency framework is not only a reporting obligation, it is also an essential tool for building trust between parties and improving the quality of information over time. Latvia contributes to the joint nationally determined contribution of the European Union and its member states. Under the European climate law, the EU has committed to reducing net greenhouse gas emissions by at least 55% by 2030 compared to 1990 levels and achieving climate neutrality by 2050. At the EU level, Latvia also has a binding national target under the effort sharing regulation. This is the European Union's internal framework for reducing emissions in sectors outside the EU emission trading system, including transport, buildings, agriculture, small industry, and waste. Latvia's target is to reduce these emissions by 17% by 2030 compared to 2005 levels. Current projections indicate that Latvia is on track to meet this target. As a small EU member state with 1.86 million inhabitants and low population density, our climate action focuses on the sectors where further progress is most important: transport, energy use, agriculture, and land use change, and forestry. We are expanding micromobility and electric vehicle infrastructure, modernizing rail transport. We invest in homegrown energy, accelerating renewable energy deployment, including biomethane projects that we see as a great opportunity for our country to strengthen our energy independency. We promote energy-efficient building renovation to increase energy efficiency and living standards for people. Now turning to land use sector, our forests cover more than half of our territory, so sustainable and resilient forestry and agriculture practices are an important part of our policies. We are investing in sustainable agriculture practices, increasing afforestation rates, improving forest regeneration and peatland restoration to strengthen carbon removals and resilience. And now allow me to highlight several achievements. The main achievement is the adoption of our new climate law, just in the end of the last year. This legislation improves coordination across ministries, institutions, municipalities. It provides a clear governance framework to support long-term climate action. Development of the law was a long process for many years, and it was very worth it. It obliges public administration to take into account climate mitigation and adaptation priorities into their policy planning process. Secondly, Latvia is investing in low-carbon solutions in different sectors. €173 million program supports the renovation of multi-apartment buildings, delivering substantial energy savings up to 30%, while reducing emissions and improving energy security for our households. We are accelerating the transition to clean mobility. Our municipalities are developing micromobility infrastructure, and there are national support programs for electric and plug-in hybrid vehicles. Finally, renewable energy development continues to be one of Latvia's strongest success stories. Solar electricity generation increased more than 10 times in 2024 compared to 2020, reaching 536 gigawatt hours. Renewable energy sources in 2024 accounted for around 73% of Latvia's electricity generation and 62% of heat generation. Latvia also remains committed to supporting developing countries through climate finance, technology transfer, and capacity building. Since 2015, we have steadily increased our contribution, with significant rise in climate finance reported in recent years. Distinguished delegates, Latvia's experience demonstrates that ambitious climate action, effective governance, and targeted investments do deliver. We remain committed to contributing to EU climate ambition and supporting collective implementation of Paris Agreement. Thank you.
Thank you, Latvia. I would now like to invite Lithuania to make an introductory statement. This statement will be delivered by Ms. Vilija Ogutavičienė, Head of the Climate Policy Group, Ministry of the Environment of the Republic of Lithuania. Ms. Ogutavičienė, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, distinguished delegates, dear colleagues. Lithuania is fully committed to the implementation of Paris Agreement and recognizes transparency as a key tool for building trust and accountability. We appreciate the opportunity to participate in the third FMCP, and we see this process as an important opportunity for continuous improvement and learning from each other. I would like to thank Secretariat as well as all experts and parties that have contributed to this process. Our first BTR demonstrates continued progress in greenhouse gas emissions reporting, policy implementation, and the achievement of our climate targets. As a member of European Union, Lithuania contributes to EU commitment to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by at least 55% by 2030 compared to 1990s level. At the core of Lithuania's national policy framework is National Climate Change Management Agenda adopted by our Parliament, and the agenda, the key target is a 30% reduction in greenhouse emissions by 2030 compared to 2005 levels. This target is divided in different sectors. EU emission trading system, or ETS sector, covering mainly large industries and energy, aims for about 32% reduction, and non-ETS sector has 21% reduction target, covering areas like transport, agriculture, and small-scale energy production. Within the non-ETS sectors, Lithuania has also established specific sectorial targets aiming to enhance ownership of sectors and set a long-term investment directions for these sectors. Since the 1990s, Lithuania has reduced greenhouse gas emissions by 32%, while our economy has grown by around 145%. This demonstrates a strong decoupling of economic growth from emissions. This long-term reduction has been driven by economic transformation, improved energy efficiency, and transition towards a low-carbon energy system. The largest emission reduction have been achieved in the ETS sector, where emissions have decreased by 48% since 2005. This progress has been driven mainly by transition away from fossil fuels and the modernization of large industrial facilities, including power plants and the chemical and cement industries. Lithuania is also among Europe's leaders in biomass-based district heating, with more than 80% of centrally supplied heat produced from biofuels. However, the most greenhouse gas emissions now come from non-ETS sectors, particularly transport with 45% and agriculture with 28% of non-ETS emissions. And future progress will therefore depend on effective actions in these areas. To achieve targets and provide long-term signal for investments, Lithuania has adopted a comprehensive package of measures in National Energy and Climate Plan for 2021-2030. These measures focus on accelerating transport electrification, improving energy efficiency, expanding renewable energy sources, and promoting more sustainable agricultural practices. Current projections indicate that planned additional measures will be sufficient to meet non-ETS emission reduction targets. Lithuania also is increasing its contribution to international climate finance through bilateral and multilateral channels, with a particular focus on EU Eastern Partnership countries, while also contributing to multilateral climate funds. Together with public finance, we mobilize private investments and to support the transfer of renewable energy technologies and capacity building. Looking ahead, achieving climate neutrality by 2050 will require continued investments, technological innovation, and strong public engagement. And Lithuanians' experience already shows that ambitious climate actions and economic growth can go hand in hand, and we remain on track to meet our climate target. I finish by that. I look forward to answering your question together with my team. We have here, which are dealing with reporting and climate policy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lithuania. I now would like to invite Sweden to provide an introductory statement. The statement will be delivered by Mr. Mattias Fromeri, Sweden's Climate Ambassador and Head of Delegation to the UNFCCC, Ministry of Climate and Enterprise of Sweden. Mr. Fromari, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, for this opportunity to present Sweden's transition to net zero in the context of the third Facilitative Multilateral Consideration of Progress. First, I would like to thank the Secretariat for the excellent organizing of the FMCP during the sessions. We know that it has been a challenging task with such a high amount of parties undergoing its FMCP. I will outline the developments of Sweden's climate policy. I will highlight how early and cross-sectoral policy action has enabled emission reductions and how carbon pricing policies and close collaboration with the private sector have played a key role in driving this progress. In 2017, just 2 years after Paris, the Swedish Parliament adopted a comprehensive climate policy framework. This represents the most significant climate reform in Sweden's history and provides the foundation for implementing the Paris Agreement domestically. The framework rests on 3 pillars: ambitious long-term emission targets, including net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2045 and negative emissions thereafter. Secondly, a climate act that stipulates that the government must present to Parliament a comprehensive climate policy action plan every 4 years at the start of each term in office, based on the long-term emission targets, and as well an annual climate report to Parliament. And an independent climate policy council assessing whether overall government policy is aligned with the climate goals. Climate action has been on Sweden's agenda for more than 3 decades. Over this period, we have demonstrated that it's possible to reduce emissions while maintaining strong economic growth and rising living standards. These efforts have also delivered important co-benefits, including improved air quality, increased industrial competitiveness, and a new business opportunity both domestically and internationally. The oil crisis in the 1970s triggered a shift in the energy sector and a transition away from oil towards alternatives such as heat pumps. At the same time, fossil fuels were gradually replaced by hydro and nuclear power, forming the basis of today's largely fossil-free electricity system. A key milestone was the introduction of the carbon tax in 1991. Other measures include landfill bans that significantly reduced methane emissions, a green electricity certificate scheme to scale up renewable energy, and a fossil fuel reduction quota obligation. So overall, Sweden's experience shows the potential of combining structural changes with long-term predictable policy instruments, particularly carbon pricing, to achieve sustained emission reductions. Long-term policy signals enable business actors to innovate and invest in solutions that accelerate the transition. As EU legislation has continued to evolve, Sweden's climate policy has been progressively aligned with the EU framework. EU legislation is reflected in our common NDC, which commits to an economy-wide net reduction of at least 55% in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030, compared to 1990 levels, covering all sectors. The Fit for 55 package constitutes the EU's main legislative framework to achieve the 2030 targets. It spans over climate, energy, transport, and taxation. Key elements include, as also colleagues have highlighted, the EU emissions trading system, a cornerstone of EU climate policy that drives cost-effective emission reductions in the energy sector, manufacturing, aviation, and maritime transport. The effort-sharing regulation, which sets binding national targets for sectors such as transport, buildings, agriculture and waste, and the LULUCF regulation, which establishes a target of removals in the land use sector. In 2025, the EU agreed on a legally binding target of reducing net greenhouse gas emissions by 90% by 2040 compared to 1990 levels. This target was incorporated into the European climate law, with the amendment entering into force just now in April 2026. Sweden is also proud to be one of the largest providers of climate finance on a per capita basis. Our climate finance has progressively increased from 8.3 billion Swedish krona in 2019 to 11 billion Swedish krona in 2024, an increase of approximately 33%. A key principle of our development finance is that priorities are defined in close collaboration with our partner countries, which has also, amongst other things, resulted in a high share of funding directed towards adaptation. Finally, I would like to highlight the Fossil-Free Sweden initiative. This government business platform brings together local and regional governments, businesses and organizations to develop sector-specific roadmaps for achieving fossil-free competitiveness, contributing to the achievement of our net zero target 2045. Today, the initiative includes more than 500 actors and 23 sectoral roadmaps have been developed, covering some 80% of the Swedish economy. Several roadmaps have already been updated to reflect that the targets can be reached earlier than previously anticipated. And with that, I conclude Sweden's presentation of our efforts to reach our climate targets and to contribute to the global transition in a just and equitable manner, harnessing the growth, jobs, gender equality, and other co-benefits that the transition to net zero brings. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Sweden. Now, with that, we will move to the combined questions and answers segment for the first number of parties that have already introduced their introductory statements. I would open the floor for the questions from parties, but we'll do it in the same way that we did it in earlier sessions. I'll collect a number of questions from parties before inviting the delegates from France, Italy, Latvia, Lithuania, and Sweden to respond. As a reminder, kindly begin by indicating to which party or parties under the FMCP you are directing your question. And I encourage you to be very concise. From what we've seen earlier, the time could be very short given the format that we have. So if we didn't get to all the questions, what we will do is that we will collect all the questions and we'll have the Secretariat share the questions to the parties to give us, to provide written answers, which will later be published in the FMCP webpage. So with that, the floor is open for questions to our parties. Please, yeah, the floor is open. Malawi, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good afternoon, colleagues. First of all, let me congratulate the parties, Sweden, Italy, and the other two parties for their presentations, but also for the submission of the BTR and for undergoing this process. So I have three questions, one for Sweden, one for Italy, and one general for all the other parties. So the first one for Sweden, thank you very much for the presentation once again. Going through your report, especially the technical expert review report, it was noted that indeed policy and measures, actions and plans have contributed a lot to GHG emission reductions in the energy, IPPU and waste sectors. However, the CO2 removals from LULUCF was noted to decrease significantly. So I wanted to understand the efforts Sweden is doing to make sure that this is addressed, and then there are also more removals happening within the LULUCF sector. To Italy, it has been noted through the presentation that decarbonization of the energy sector remains a major challenge. The question is, how does Italy assess the likelihood of achieving its future climate targets, and what additional measures are being considered to accelerate energy systems decarbonization in line with the outcomes of the first global stocktake? The question to all the parties, we have learned here how all the parties established the regulatory frameworks, including acts. So we want to hear from the parties in terms of the lessons learned on how this climate change legislation have helped establish clear mandates for institutions responsible for reporting, and what aspects of this experience might be very relevant for developing countries seeking to strengthen our own transparency systems. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Malawi. I'll now give the floor to New Zealand. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Congratulations to all parties on submitting their first BTR and undergoing the FMCP. My question is for France. Could France please explain how it uses emissions projections to inform domestic policy development and how they are used to track progress towards your NDC? Thanks.
Thank you, New Zealand. Now I'll give the floor to Australia. You have the floor.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Firstly, may I say thank you and for those presentations and a warm congratulations on all parties who have submitted a BTR. I have a question for Italy and a question for Sweden. The question for Italy is, given the share of emissions from road transport in Italy and the projections that emissions from road transport will reduce significantly by 2040, what measures are foreseen to help reduce emissions from this sector in the coming years? And for Sweden, Sweden is to be commended for its efforts to reduce emissions across its economy. Given the importance of road transport emissions in Sweden's national emissions profile, what policies and measures has Sweden found to be the most effective in reducing emissions from this sector? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Australia. I will take additional question from one additional party. So now we'll give the floor to South Africa.
Thank you, Chairperson, and good afternoon to everyone. My question is to Lithuania. I would firstly like to congratulate all the parties on their submission of the BTRs and also undergoing the FMCP. So Lithuania reports that solid biomass accounted for 70.2% of its renewable supply in 2022 and has played a significant role in increasing the share of renewable energy in the national energy mix. So could Lithuania share its experience regarding the key policies and measures that have been most effective in promoting the sustainable use of this biomass, and any lessons learned that may be relevant to other parties that are seeking to increase contribution of biomass to their renewable energy transition? Thank you.
Thank you very much, South Africa. At this point, I will go back to the parties under the FMCP and give them the opportunity to respond to the first set of questions. I'll give you a couple of minutes. Just let me know when you are ready. Just give me a signal. All right, now I think we'll go with Italy. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the question. I think there was a question from Malawi with regard to the decarbonization of our energy sector, which definitely we mentioned in our presentation is one of the issues that we need to strongly tackle. Well, first of all, let me see that we are committed to neutrality by 2050. Italy has phased out the use of coal in 2025, which was a major step towards the decarbonization of our energy sector. And we are steadily increasing the uptake of renewables, hydropowers, photovoltaic, and wind. We envisage to increase in the electricity production in the next year by 50-20% of renewable, and combined with the use also of biofuels, biomethane, within the sector. So basically, keep on improving energy efficiency and keep on increasing the uptake of renewables. With regard to the question from, I think it was Australia, on the road transport, yes, indeed, another big sector for us. There is a combination of measures that we are considering to reduce emission. First of all, as you might know, we are under the European regulation on CO2 standards for car and vans, which set binding target to reduce CO2 emissions from cars. In Italy, there is a huge problem in terms of cultural problem in the use of cars, and this was mainly. There was an uptake in the use of car right after the COVID pandemic. So this is something that we need to tackle also at cultural level. And to do so, we are trying to shift from private transportation to public transportation, increasing the rail transit. And as I was mentioning, it's also in our presentation, trying to boost the logistical efficiency, and also including clean energy carriers like the use of biofuels, which will help us in steadily decreasing the use of CO2. And definitely in the end, also electrification is very much part of the picture, though it really depends on the uptake of the use of electric car, which in Italy is not that strong at the moment, but it's something that we need to increase. And I hope with that I answered the questions.
Thank you, Italy. I'll now give the floor to Sweden and then Latvia. Sweden.
Thank you, Chair. I would have been happy to answer questions on the road transport sector as well. We know there are solutions out there, both in terms of heavy-duty vehicles and for light vehicles. But I'll stick to the questions, and thank you so much, both to Malawi and to Australia. Firstly, in response to our colleague from Malawi, just highlighting that the total net removals for the entire sector amounted to 54 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalents in 2024, and the inter-annual variation is considerable, we should bear in mind. The largest net removals occur on forest land, which represents some 70% of Sweden's land area, and there is also net sequestration in harvested wood products, and the increasing sink is mainly seen in living trees, where after around 10 years of decline, the trend is now shifting back towards larger sink. Net removals decreased sharply during the period 2010 to 2021 due to reduced growth, while both harvesting and natural losses were high. Now the tree growth has increased, while both natural mortality and harvests have reduced. And the government is taking measures to increase net removals from the land use sectors and thereby contributing to Sweden's commitment under the EU LULUCF regulation. There are many measures in place, but I'd just like to mention three new measures. Firstly, an initiative for the State Forest Agency to provide advisory services to forest owners to enhance carbon sequestration and biodiversity in Swedish forest. Secondly, an investment in the re-wetting of abandoned agriculture peatland. And thirdly, an additional support to country administrative boards to accelerate the processing of wetland-related permits. More efficient permitting processes also contribute to efforts on biodiversity and climate adaptation. The government has in recent years increased the level of ambition and capacity in its work on wetland restoration, which has led to an expansion of wetland restoration. The restoration of wetlands have increased and capacity building within the responsible authorities is still ongoing. As response to the question from our colleague from Australia, just highlighting that we have implemented a comprehensive and mutually reinforcing set of policies to reduce emissions from road transport. Based on the information presented in our reports, we would highlight the following measures as particularly important. First, the biofuel blending obligation, which requires fuel suppliers to gradually reduce the greenhouse gas intensity of petrol and diesel through increased blending of sustainable biofuels. This policy has been a central driver of emission reductions in the transport sector and has enabled rapid deployment of biofuels within the existing vehicle fleet. Second, carbon pricing has been a cornerstone of Sweden's approach. Road transport fuels are subject to a relatively high carbon tax, which provides a strong and consistent economic incentive for both fuel switching and efficiency improvements. I'm happy to note also that we are now chairing the Global Carbon Pricing Challenge, aiming to encourage more countries to deploy carbon pricing instruments. So I'm pleased to invite all parties to join us in the GCPC. Thirdly, Sweden has implemented several support schemes for the electrification of transport. This includes an electric car premium specifically targeted to vulnerable households in rural areas, climate premiums for trucks and buses, as well as support for electric charging infrastructure. And finally, also like to highlight the broader policy integration, including urban planning, public transport investments, and measures to improve transport efficiency, which complement core economic instruments. So taken together, these policies have proven effective in driving emission reductions in Sweden's road transport sector while maintaining flexibility and cost effectiveness. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sweden. I'd now like to give the floor to Latvia. You have the floor.
Thank you. I would like to respond to a colleague from Malawi's questions on established procedures. As I mentioned in my statement, we're proud that we adopted the legislation that defines clearly responsibilities in all the climate policy framework. So basically, it is the law, the Climate Resilience and Economic Sustainability Law, and the law on pollution that set mandate and responsible among different ministries to plan their policies and measures for climate target achievement. And we have also a regulation that sets a procedure and institutional responsibilities to prepare greenhouse gas inventories, projections, and adaptation reporting. So this system is already for many years, and we're very happy that it is established system, and we can just improve it along the time. The Ministry of Energy and Climate is the central coordinating institution for climate policy. It works closely with sectoral ministries, including agriculture, transport, economics, finance, smart administration, and regional development, and others. These ministries are responsible for measures in their sectors, while the Ministry of Climate and Energy coordinates overall climate policy, monitoring, and reporting. And with each process and each report prepared, our work is improving and this collaboration is strengthening. At the administrative level, Latvia has interministerial working group on climate policy coordination involving deputy state secretaries from several ministries. This group is used to discuss important climate-related policy documents, legislation, the National Energy and Climate Plan, and progress reporting before submission to the government when necessary. In addition, Latvia prepares annual report for the government on progress towards the fulfillment of greenhouse gas emission reduction and carbon removal commitments. Responsible ministries report on the implementation status of policies and measures within their competence, and progress is reviewed at the level of deputy state secretaries. We have also introduced climate policy and PEMS management tool to support more systematic monitoring of measure. This tool helps track policies and measures, responsible institutions, implementation status, indicators, financing, and we're also identifying risks and managing them. The BTR1 process further strengthened this framework by linking the inventory, policies and measures, projections, and target tracking into one coherent transparency system. Thank you for your question.
Thank you, Latvia. I'll now give the floor to France. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. I would like first to respond to the question from the colleague from Malawi. One of the lessons I've learned is how important it is to have involvement at the highest level of the government. Now we're finalizing our third national climate strategy, and I remember when we were doing our second one, at the time, it was really just a problem of the Ministry of Environment, and the other ministries weren't that involved. And the change happened in 2022. The president created an entity called the General Secretariat for Ecological Planning, and it was located in the Prime Minister's office. And that really made a difference in mobilizing other ministries, and it really made the climate strategy a whole of government effort, and that made a big difference. Now, I would like to respond to the colleague from New Zealand on how we use climate projections to adjust our policies. When we do our strategy, we do not just we project emissions based on physical targets. For instance, we have a target for the share of electric vehicles in 2030. And what happened was we have this objective for also cars, light-duty vehicles, trucks, and we saw that we were very late on the objective for trucks. And so one of the measures that we've taken is that we increased the premium for electric trucks to 100,000 euros. And we're hoping that this will accelerate the deployment of trucks, as well as installing more charging stations specifically for trucks. And to complement on this, I would like to give the floor to my colleague Samuel Laval, who does all of our modeling work, to explain how we're using our different modeling with existing measures, with additional measures, to guide our policy developments.
Yeah, thank you very much. A few compliments on our WEM scenario, so with existing measures, so the scenario considering the policies and measures that are already existing, and only these ones. And we are currently on the process of updating this scenario. The last version was conducted in 2024 and showed a reduction of 40% of GHG emission in 2030 compared to 1990. So these results can be compared to other results of scenarios, of previous scenarios, to track the progress of policies and measures. So, for example, a few years before, we had conducted another WEM scenario that reaches 35% reduction in 2030 compared to 1990. So it shows that in a few years, policies and measures were improved and conducted to a better results, a decrease of emission in 2030. We can also compare these WEM results to the WAM scenario and to our goals. So France has the target of reducing GHG emission of minus 50% in 2030. So the WEM conducted that showed that we were at minus 40%, show the way we have before us to reach the 2030 goal.
Thank you very much, France. I'll now give the floor to Lithuania. Lithuania, you have the floor.
Thank you. Answering to the question from the colleague from South Africa, I would like to underline firstly that Lithuania has made substantial progress in transforming its energy sector and considers renewable energy development as a key pillar of both climate policy and energy security and independence. And since 1990s, in Lithuania, renewable energy consumption has increased nearly fivefold, and at the same time, oil use has dropped by more than half, and natural gas by over 70%. And by 2030, Lithuania has an ambition to reach 100% renewables in electricity production and to use 90% of biomass in central heating. The increasing use of renewable energy in Lithuania has been driven by a combination of policy and investment measures. In the heating sector, one of the most important drivers has been support for the conversion of district heating systems from fossil fuels to biomass, supported by national and EU funding. As a result, solid biomass now plays a major role in heat production and accounts for a significant share of Lithuania's renewable energy consumption. Additional drivers include renewable energy support schemes, investments in biomass-based high-efficient cogeneration plants, measures promoting renewable heating technologies, and implementation of course, our national energy and climate plans measures. And also sustainable forest management and the availability of domestic biomass resources have also facilitated the widespread use of solid biomass as renewable energy sources. And to answer a question from a colleague from Malawi, I would like to pass the floor to my colleague, Judita, please.
In regards to institutional framework for policy and measure development and implementation in Lithuania, in 2020, we established working group by Prime Minister decree to coordinate implementation to the energy and climate targets, policies and measures. The working group includes representatives of 10 ministries which are working in this area. To achieve high-quality results in climate and energy target, the Ministry of Environment, together with Ministry of Energy, had set up a sectorial working groups where representatives of business, science, and NGO have suggestions on greenhouse gases reduction measures, implementation, and going in the green way. In this process, all the social partners were brought together in the 5 decarbonization working groups covering 5 sectors like agriculture and forestry, energy, industry, transport, and waste circular economy. Also, that to hear the voice of the science, in 2023, Lithuania also established the National Climate Change Committee, an advisory body of the Ministry of Environment, providing independent scientific advice on the formulation, assessment, and implementation of national climate change management policies. So that's all in this question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lithuania. I'll now go back to take a next round of questions from the delegates. So I'll give the floor now to the United Kingdom. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and congratulations to all parties for submitting your first BTRs. I have 2 questions. The first to France. You mentioned in your report the need for France to accelerate domestic renewable energy to reduce its reliance on imports. Can you share some successes and challenges of this transition? And my second is to Sweden. You mentioned in your report that you established a climate reporting ordinance in 2014 to support international climate reporting. Could Sweden elaborate on any positive experiences in establishing this ordinance and strengthening the institutional arrangements for preparing the BTR? Thank you.
Thank you very much to the UK. Now we'll give the floor to the Cook Islands. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Congratulations, parties, for the successful submission of your BTRs. I have two questions. The first is for Sweden. Sweden has successfully reduced its emissions across its economy since 1990. Your BTR indicates the additional emissions reductions will be needed to achieve national climate targets. Could you please elaborate on the remaining emissions gap and just highlight the key sectors and policy measures expected to deliver the additional reductions required by 2030? My second question is to France. France's overseas countries and territories account for 1% of national emissions and have distinct governance arrangements. How does France coordinate climate reporting and implementation across those territories? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cook Islands. Now I'll give the floor to Canada. Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you. We have one question for Latvia on LULUCF. Latvia's presentation noted the contribution of peatland restoration in the LULUCF sector. Can you please elaborate on the expected scale of impact and any key lessons from the implementation of this measure? Thank you.
Thank you, Canada. Next, I'll give the floor to Norway. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and congratulations to all the countries undergoing their first FMCP. I have questions for Sweden and Lithuania. To Sweden, can you share positive lessons learned and key challenges from implementing Klimatklivet, that is the climate leap, particularly regarding its role in mobilizing additional investments, supporting low-carbon technologies, and ensuring effective access? To Lithuania, we note in your presentation that you expect to meet your 2030 non-ETS target with additional measures. Can you share what the most important policies and measures are in your with additional measures projections scenario? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Norway. I'll now go to our panel of parties for their answers. So whenever you are ready, just give me a signal and I'll give the floor back to you. I'd like now to give the floor to France. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. I will first respond to the question from the colleagues from the UK on the challenges and successes in deploying renewable energy. So in France, we love to have heated arguments over nuclear versus renewable. Our view is that we need both. And then when we talk of renewables, we don't talk only on renewable electricity, but also heat. And renewable heat is a very important aspect, in particular developing urban district heating. Thank you very much, Samuel. And but anyway, when it comes to our targets in terms of renewables, we have. On photovoltaic, we have an objective to triple the installed capacity by 2035. On onshore wind, it's really to maintain the pace of current development in regard also of opposition linked to people who think that there are too many windmills in certain areas of France, but continuing accelerating on offshore wind development, where we have an objective to reach 15 gigawatt of capacity by 2035, increasing our capacity of hydropower and multiplying by 6 the biomethane production, and doubling the objective in renewable and recovered heat production between 2022 and 2035. I would say one of the major challenge is really on the transmission and distribution networks and the grid, to absorb all these new connections from renewable developments. And now I will leave my colleague Nolwenn Brossier to answer the question from the Cook Islands on our overseas countries and territories.
Thank you, Cook Island, for your question. It's actually a very good question because it's a main difference for France between the Kyoto Protocol and the Paris Agreement arrangement. So under the Paris Agreement, all of France is considered on the application scope of the Paris Agreement. Therefore, we have 2 perimeters. We have the European Union scope and we have the overseas countries and territories. They are in the number of 5. So we have the New Caledonia, French Polynesia, we have Wallis and Futuna, St. Peter and Miquelon, and we have St. Barthélemy. All these countries, all these territories have very different circumstances and very different policies in place, and therefore we are the one to collect every of their commitments. So the French overseas and territories are collectively committed to the Paris Agreement, which means that they have also a dedicated component of France's NDC, and each of them has jurisdiction over environmental matters, which means that they set their own climate targets, as well as the policies and measures to reach said targets. They also have a specific local governance differing from one another. So currently we are actually developing a better governance process so that we can more effectively get all the information in order to efficiently give the information for the BTR that are biennial. And with regard to inventories, we have experts inventories who are the CITEPA. They compile France's inventory, including for the overseas countries and territories. Yeah, I think that's about it in terms of our governance with the overseas countries and territories. Thank you.
Thank you very much, France. Now I would like to give the floor to Sweden. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks also to colleagues for additional questions. Firstly, in response to our colleague from Norway, Klimatklivet, or the Climate Leap, is indeed an important instrument for mobilizing concrete local climate investments with measurable results across the country. Since 2015, the program has allocated around 19 billion Swedish krona to more than 31,500 local climate measures, which are expected to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by approximately 3.1 million tons per year. One important lesson learned is that the program has been able to support a broad range of low-carbon solutions across sectors. This includes, for example, biogas, transition from fossil to renewable energy, charging infrastructure, circular flows, agriculture, and solutions that transition away from fossil fuels in shipping, aviation, heavy transport, and hydrogen. This broad scope has made it possible to deliver direct emission reductions and to support the deployment of newer technologies. For example, support under the Climate Leap has contributed to more than 262,000 new charging points, 42 hydrogen refueling stations, and several hydrogen production facilities. At the same time, Sweden has learned that strong additionality and robust project assessment is essential for the effectiveness of the scheme. Support is directed to physical investments that reduce emissions, and applicants must demonstrate both the climate impact of the measure and the need for public support. Another important element is the strong focus on climate benefit. The program prioritizes investments that provide the greatest and most durable emission reductions per krona invested, and therefore robust emission calculations are a key part of the application process. Overall, our experience is that targeted investment support can be an effective way to accelerate climate action when it combines clear climate criteria, broad technological scope, and systematic follow-up of results. Moving on then to the question from the United Kingdom, we would highlight that there are several benefits in having established the climate reporting ordinance in Sweden. First and foremost, the ordinance has provided a clear and stable legal foundation for Sweden's climate reporting system. It clearly defines the role of government agencies and points out the Swedish Environmental Protection Agency as the coordinating agency. The ordinance is also complemented by formal agreements that specify details in terms of responsibilities, data responsibility, and timelines in delivering the data and information to the Swedish EPA. In practice, this has strengthened coordination, improved long-term predictability, and helped ensure that the necessary capacity and resources are in place for preparing the BTR and the greenhouse gas inventory. Another positive experience is that the ordinance has supported a structured and quality-assured reporting system over time. This helps ensure that reporting is timely, transparent, accurate, consistent, comparable, and complete, supported by quality assurance and quality control procedures, peer review, and continuous improvement. The ordinance has also been updated to reflect evolving reporting requirements under both the Paris Agreement and EU legislation, which has helped keep the institutional arrangements fit for purpose. Overall, these arrangements have provided us with a robust, reliable, and long-term foundation for preparing our BTR and meeting international reporting requirements, and we're of course happy to share further detail with partners. Finally, as a response to the colleague from Cook Islands, I think it's fair to say that we're hoping that the government, and we hope to be working to fulfill our part of climate goals for the EU and reach all the way to net zero emissions by 2045. Technology development and an increase in the use of climate-neutral electricity are prerequisites for the transition. In Sweden, nuclear expansion is an important measure to reduce our emissions nationally through the electrification of transport and industry. The transition to net zero can only succeed if it takes place in a growing economy. The legitimacy for citizens is a prerequisite for the transition, which is also based on the ability to find effective instruments where the conditions and living standards of individuals, households, and businesses do not stagnate, and where the whole country and all groups of societies have equal opportunities in the transition. We want to focus our efforts where we get the most emission reductions, as we believe climate policy needs to be cost-effective. More needs to be done to reach Sweden's climate targets to 2030, and the government has therefore appointed an inquiry commissioner to assess which additional measures within the transport sector are needed to achieve the targets in a cost-effective manner. The commissioner has presented his proposal a few weeks ago, and we are now analyzing them at the moment. Significant progress has been made, but we acknowledge that further measures are required, and we look forward to collaborating with partners globally to achieve that progress. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sweden, for addressing the delegates' questions. I'll now give the floor to Lithuania. You have the floor.
Regarding the Norway question about the additional measures for non-ETS sector. So in Lithuania, in non-ETS sector, 40% of the emissions are from transport sector. So we're having 14 different additional measures. The biggest effect are coming from the measure which are promoting the development of alternative fuel use, infrastructure and transport. So we are looking and for all the infrastructure for hydrogen, biomethane, and electric cars, especially for heavy-duty vehicles because it's quite hard to implement them and to have trucks and other heavy-duty machines for this. Also, we are producing some measures for the rail system. So is for the intermodal transport, how to have some products from the rails, from the road transport to the rail transport. Second bigger emitter are agriculture. In agriculture, we're having the 6 additional measures. The biggest impact are from development of precision fertilization. Also, the effects are coming for climate-friendly livestock farming. So we are looking at how to improve not ploughing technologies in agriculture, also how to deal with the material, so with biomass producing technologies and other ones.
Thank you, Lithuania. Now I'll give the floor to Latvia. You have the floor.
Thank you. Responding to the question from colleague from Canada on peatland restoration, I would like to explain, since emission reduction in LULUCF is a challenging task, we're exploring all the possible measures that could be done there. We are implementing recultivation of historically used peat extraction sites by selecting the most appropriate type of recultivation. Abundant peat extraction sites are a considerable source of GHG emissions. Afforestation, establishment of perennial energy crops, or extraction of remaining peat layer with following flooding or rewetting of areas where growing of perennial crops for biomass production is not possible, may lead to significant reduction of GHG emissions. GHG emission reduction potential is estimated considering that half of the degraded peatlands can be afforested. The area which will be affected by this measure for 7 years period between 2023 and 2030 is 12,000 hectares, including 4,500 hectares of afforested areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Latvia. At this point of time, we're approaching the end of our allocated time, and therefore, I will call for a final list of parties wishing to raise questions. I will invite the parties to briefly raise any remaining question, and the Secretariat will collect the transcript of these questions and will share them with the parties under the FMCP, and the parties and our panelists under the FMCP will respond to these questions in writing after the session. The questions and responses will be published on the FMCP working group session. And with that, we'll open the floor for the remaining questions. And I have in my list, Saudi Arabia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and we'd like to congratulate all the parties for their first FMCP. We have 3 questions. The first is for Sweden. I'll try to be quick. So Sweden noted the expansion of the Industry Leap to support industrial emissions reductions. Could Sweden provide examples of how support under this program addresses emissions from hard-to-abate industrial activities and whether carbon capture technologies are being considered within these efforts? And my second question is for Italy. So Italy presented a range of measures implemented within the EU framework. Could Italy elaborate on how its policy framework supports a technology-neutral approach that enables the deployment of different mitigation solutions across sectors, taking into account your national, of course, circumstances and sector-specific challenges? Last question for Latvia. As the share of renewable energies in electricity generation continues to increase, could Latvia elaborate on the measures being taken to ensure energy system reliability and security, of supply during periods of variable renewable generation? Thank you.
Thank you, Saudi Arabia. I'll now give the floor to Samoa. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Congratulations to all parties, and thank you very much for the comprehensive presentations. My question is for France, who spoke about electrification as a key pillar of their decarbonization strategy. As a small island developing state, Samoa is exploring electrification pathways for marine transportation under its NDC. Could you share what institutional, financing, or policy mechanisms have been most effective in coordinating government, private sector, and civil society to support large-scale electrification? Thanks.
Thank you, Samoa. I'll now give the floor to Republic of Korea. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Korea has one question for both Lithuania and Latvia. We note that both countries have seen a notable increase in climate finance in 2023 compared to previous years. So could both parties share what the main drivers behind this increase were and what experience they have in mobilizing private finance alongside the public funding? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Republic of Korea. And at this point, I would like, to thank you all delegates for the questions, and thank you, France, Italy, Latvia, Lithuania, and Sweden for your responses. And I would like to invite all the delegates to join me for a round of applause to congratulate them for finishing the FMCP. And let us now turn to the next set of parties under the FMCP. I would now like to invite Uruguay to make an introductory statement. This statement will be delivered by Ms. Maria Fernanda Souza, National Director of Climate Change, and Ms. Judith Torres, Manager of Cooperation and International Agenda at the National Climate Change Directorate, both from the Ministry of Environment. Uruguay, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Uruguay values this facilitative space to share the progress made in implementing our climate commitments. With a population of 3.5 million, our economy is based primarily on agriculture and services. Livestock farming, cattle, and sheep is central, alongside crops such as wheat, corn, rice, soybean, and barley. The main industries are meat processing, dairy, pulp and paper, timber, alcohol, and cement, and primary products continue to represent a very significant share of exports. The service sector has also grown, particularly tourism, transportation, logistics, information, and communication technologies. This production and export structure makes Uruguay's economy particularly vulnerable to the adverse effects of climate change. Among the impacts of variability and climate change affecting the country are first, droughts, which cause losses in the agricultural sector, increased energy costs, difficulties in accessing drinking water, heightened wildfire risk, and in severe cases, displacement of rural population. Second, floods, which affect public health, cause displacement, and damage production and infrastructure. Third, extreme coastal events which produce erosion, damage infrastructure, negatively impact tourism, and affect coastal and marine ecosystems and the artisanal fisheries sector that depends on them. Fourth, severe storms which endanger the population, and finally, cold and heat waves which affect human and animal health and further increase wildfire risk. These impacts also entail biodiversity loss and ecosystem degradation, disproportionately affecting population in vulnerable settlements, particularly in flood-prone and coastal areas. As an example, between 2015 and 2019, 85,000 people were evacuated or self-evacuating due to flooding, affecting their access to food, housing, and health, and causing economic losses from damage to private and public property. Since the beginning of 2023, the National Emergency System has recorded 16 floods, with losses estimated at approximately 35 million American dollars. According to the Uruguayan Institute of Meteorology, between January 2020 and December 2023, the country spent more than 60% of that nearly 4-year period under drought conditions, including a stretch of 17 consecutive months from April 2022 to September 2023. The impact of that drought on agricultural production is estimated around $1.88 billion, equivalent to the 3% of our GDP. This vulnerability explains the high priority given to resilience and adaptation measures. Adaptation remains Uruguay's top priority to protect its communities, ecosystems, and economy. Uruguay has chosen its NDC as the vehicle for its adaptation communications, with sectoral maps for agriculture, cities and infrastructure, coastal areas, energy, and one currently under development for the health sector. In any case, although adaptation is the priority, Uruguay has implemented several policies and programs that promote early mitigation actions, including sustainable diversification of the energy matrix, with more than 60% renewable energy and 98% of renewable energy in electric matrix, sustainable and efficient transportation, increased efficiency and productivity in agricultural production systems, conservation of carbon stock in forest land, grasslands, wetlands, and croplands, and waste management and treatment. Considering that the National Climate Change Policy establishes general strategic guidelines for responding to climate change, and that the NDCs aim to implement measures in the short term, Uruguay's long-term climate strategy for long emissions and climate-resilient development reflects the country's long-term vision and the aspirational goal of CO2 neutrality by 2050, covering both adaptation and mitigation. To date, Uruguay has submitted 3 NDCs that include mitigation objectives and measures, as well as adaptation targets. The first NDC, with a 2025 horizon, comprised 11 unconditional mitigation targets and also contains conditional targets dependent on access to additional means of implementation. Uruguay has made relevant progress in decarbonizing its economy. While significant progress has been achieved in reducing emission intensity, the country has suffered negative impacts that result in economic growth that was 10% lower than projected when the first NDC was submitted, reflected in lower than expected progress towards its targets. Nonetheless, Uruguay continues incorporating climate action into its economic policy, notably through the issuance of a sovereign bond linkage to climate change indicators. Uruguay submitted its second NDC in 2022 with a 2030 horizon and its third in 2024 with a 2035 horizon, including the second and third adaptation communications respectively. Unlike the first NDC, both define targets in absolute terms, in line with the scenarios outlined in the long-term climate strategy. While Uruguay remains strongly committed to a low-carbon economy, many of the measures identified in the National Climate Change Policy and in the NDCs require additional specific implementation resources, as do the adaptation priorities planned through the National Adaptation Plans. In this regard, Uruguay will continue to need support for the preparation and presentation of its reports, including the BTR and national communications. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Uruguay. I would now like to invite Argentina to make an introductory statement. This statement will be delivered by Ms. Natalie Biasoli, technical expert of the BTR team. Ms. Biasoli, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, distinguished delegates and colleagues. It is an honor to participate in this working session. The third working group session of the FMCP instances is highly significant as it concludes the process of preparation, submission, and review of our first BTR presented in December 2024. The preparation of this first BTR required a significant national effort, as the implementation of the ETF has much more comprehensive requirements for reporting that demanded a substantial effort to adapt our information system into a new type of report. We are proud to say that this process was successful due to the robustness of our information system that has been built and continuously improved since the development of the first BUR in 2015. In Chapter 2 of the BTR, Argentina has presented its commitments in both mitigation and adaptation components. As encouraged in Article 4 of the Paris Agreement, Argentina has, for its mitigation component, an absolute and economy-wide emission target. For that reason, the GHG inventory is the main tool to track the progress of its implementation. And so, we consider important to highlight Argentina's robust, transparent, and sustainable national GHG inventory system. Regarding the inventory, during each cycle, information systems and methodologies are developed to increase transparency, accuracy, and completeness. Over the past cycles, in terms of completeness, new categories were developed. On accuracy, local methodologies were also established, reaching 79% of emissions calculated with Tier 2 methodologies. And there was also an upgrade on the consistent representation of land, improving the scope. Besides the increased detail in information regarding the national GHG inventory and mitigation actions, we would also like to highlight the inclusion in the first BTR of non-mandatory information in the chapters of support required and received, adaptation, and loss and damage, therefore providing an integral vision on the subject. Looking back at the preparation of the BTR, it is clear that Argentina was able to implement numerous upgrades to comply with the MPGs and the ETF. But there is still a long way to go, and hence the continuity of international support remains to be essential. Our technical team continues its efforts to develop new methods and strategies for the complete and timely submission of its upcoming BTRs. In the light of its national capacities, Argentina still applies flexibilities and still needs international support and capacity building to sustain the technical team and improve the climate information system and to address the challenge associated to the use of ETF tools to fully comply with its requirements. Finally, we appreciate the questions received, both from the technical experts, review team, and colleagues from other parties, that help us continue to identify further improvements and work lines with the sustained commitment to provide complete, reliable, and transparent information. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Argentina. I would now like to invite Chile to provide an introductory statement. This statement will be delivered by Ms. Ana Guerrero, BTR Coordinator from the Climate Change Division, Ministry of Environment. Ms. Guerrero, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Good afternoon, distinguished colleagues. It's a pleasure for Chile to participate in this session and to present the key findings of our first BTR, which was produced with the support of the GEF and FAO. For Chile, climate transparency has been a long-standing commitment, supported by more than 20 years of continued reporting on the FMCP3. This commitment has been further strengthened through our framework law on climate change, which legally established the object of achieving and maintaining carbon neutrality and climate resilience by no later than 2050. The law translates our international commitments into mandatory sectorial and territorial climate plans, providing a strong governance framework for implementation. Our transparency system relies on a robust national greenhouse inventory that, in our first BTR, presents a consistent 33 years time series covering the period from 1990 and to 2022. The inventory showed that the energy sector remains the largest source of emission, accounting for more than 75% of the national total, while the LULUCF sector continues to play a key role as the country's principal carbon sink. Chile also monitors the implementation of the NDC through a carbon budget approach. To date, nearly 30% of the allocated carbon budget has been accounted for, while the most significant mitigation outcomes are expected during the second half of the implementation period as key policies become fully operational. Within this framework, also tracks the implementation of key forest-related indicators, including the area of sustainable manage forest and the area of afforestation and reforestation activities. These indicators are particularly relevant as they contribute to both mitigation and adaptation objectives by enhancing carbon sequestration, increasing ecosystem resilience, and supporting biodiversity and water regulation. Building the forest sector remains a cornerstone of Chile's pathway toward achieving carbon neutrality while building resilience to the impact of climate change. Looking ahead, the information in the first PTR shows us our greenhouse gas projection indicate a decline emission pathway from 2023 onwards under the mitigation scenario. This trend is driven mainly by the progressive phase-out of coal-fired power plants, together with the expansion of renewable energy. This projection provides an important basis for evaluating the effectiveness of our mitigation strategy and other pathways towards carbon neutrality. Today, our latest emission modeling projects a sustained downward trajectory initiated in 2023 under our current mitigation framework. On the other hand, adaptation remains a national priority for Chile due to its unique geography and climate diversity. The country faces multiple climate risks, including prolonged drought and water scarcity, rising temperatures, and heat waves, wildfires, glacier regret, coastal impacts, and changing precipitations patterns that affect ecosystems, communities, infrastructures, and product sector throughout the territory. In response, Chile has backed its adaptation governments through the implementation of the Climate Change Framework Law, significant progress in the National Adaptation Plan, and its going update in alignment with the current climate challenge and priorities, and the development and implementation of sectoral adaptation plans. Together, these instruments are helping address climate risk across environment, social, and territorial and productive systems, while providing nature-based solutions, ecosystem restoration, integrate water resource management, and engage climate resilience. In this regard, we would like to express our sincere gratitude to the Technical Expert Review team for their visit in October 2025 and productive review. The review covered our national GHG inventory, mitigation policies, NDC tracking, and adaptation frameworks, which the last one, despite being voluntary under the ETF. The review provides valuable insight, and we have identified significant continuous improvement for our upcoming BTR. And we are already incorporating part of them into the preparation of our second BTR. Building upon this technical and institutional foundation, Chile submitted an update NDC in 2025, aligned with the outcomes of the global stoic. These include engaged ambition on renewable energy efficiency, and methane mitigation, while incorporating a dedicated chapter on information to facilitate clarity, transparency, and understanding, reinforcing our commitment to the effective implementation of the ETF. Finally, we appreciate this opportunity to share our experience and look forward to your question and to constructive exchange of view. And I would like to thank my colleagues who are joining us online, and it will be a pleasure to support the discussion and respond to any technical question you may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chile. I would now like to invite Costa Rica to make an introductory statement. This statement will be delivered by Ms. Adriana Bonilla Vargas, Director of Climate Change at the Ministry of Environment and Energy in Costa Rica. Ms. Bonilla Vargas, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, for this opportunity to communicate our efforts in advancing a resilient and low-emission development pathway grounded in ambition, implementation, and transparency. Distinguished colleagues, in 2025, Costa Rica submitted its updated National Determined Contribution, NDC 3.0, building on the experience gained through the implementation and preparation of our first biennial transparency report. This new NDC reflects a whole-of-society effort developed through a highly participatory process involving over 500 stakeholders from national and subnational government, local communities, indigenous peoples, academia, civil society, and the private sector. This inclusive approach has strengthened national ownership underlying climate action with development priorities. NDC 3.0 establishes a clear roadmap for climate action through 2035. On mitigation, Costa Rica has adopted an economy-wide emissions cap of 11,380 gigagrams of CO2, equivalent by 2030, alongside a carbon budget for 2021-2030. The NDC includes 40 mitigation contributions across key sectors such as transport, energy, agriculture, and waste. On adaptation, 28 contributions strengthen resilience across ecosystems, communities, and productive sectors, and hydric resources. These efforts are guided by cross-cutting principles, including just transition, gender equality, human rights, and nature-based solutions. Through our first biennial transparency report, developed with funding support of the Global Environmental Fund, Costa Rica assessed progress under its previous NDC, compounded by 103 contributions, with a balance of 32 that have been completed, 52 are under implementation, and 19 are with limited progress or pending actions. This assessment has helped inform the design of NDC 3.0, ensuring that new commitments are grounded in practical experience and lessons learned. We are already seeing tangible results as Costa Rica continues to operate an electricity system powered almost entirely by renewable resources, over 95%, forest conservation policies which allowed our country to keep over 52% of our territory under forest cover, and a successful program of payment for environmental services which have been under implementation for 29 years. Forest conservation policies remain central to enhancing carbon removals, and adaptation planning has significantly advanced. At the same time, we have operationalized our national transparency platform, which enables continuous tracking of climate action and supports evidence-based decision-making. We're now entering a new phase focused on accelerating implementation. The rollout of NDC 3.0 will be supported by the Decarbonization Action Plan for 2026-2030, which includes over 100 concrete measures under our LTS 2050, aiming for a full decarbonized economy by then. Priority areas include electric mobility, low carbon agriculture, and ecosystem protection. In parallel, we are advancing the implementation of our National Adaptation Plan and preparing our second biennial transparency report. However, important challenges remain. Transport continues to be the largest source of emissions and represents one of the most complex sectors to transform, including the growing widespread use of the motorcycle as a work vehicle. Additional efforts are needed to modernize infrastructure, expand access to climate finance, and strengthen technical capacities. Access to technology and its transfer will be essential to accelerate decarbonization. Transparency continues to be a cornerstone of our approach. The submission of our first biennial transparency report in 2024 marked a significant milestone, and we remain committed to strengthening our transparency systems to ensure accountability and continuous improvement. Looking ahead, Costa Rica prioritized for 2026-2030, including implementing NDC, scaling adaptation, strengthening transparency, mobilizing climate finance, and advancing in just transition. International cooperation has been fundamental to our progress. Between 2014 and 2024, Costa Rica mobilized approximately $607 million across more than 300 climate-related projects. However, nearly one-third of identified climate initiatives still lack financing. This underscored the urgent need to scale up support in the form of finance, technology transfer, and capacity building. To finish, allow me to highlight 4 key messages. First, ambition. Costa Rica has strengthened its climate commitments through a clear, comprehensive NDC 3.0. Second, implementation. We are translating commitments into action through concrete plans and measurable results. Third, transparency. Robust systems are enabling accountability and informed decision-making. 4, international cooperation. Continued support is essential to accelerate progress and achieve the objectives of the Paris Agreement through our NDC, including means of implementation, such as technology transfer, training, and climate financing, to keep us on the track of ambition we have committed to. Finally, we don't want to forget to thank the Secretariat and the Transparency Division for the in-country technical expert review of our first PTR, which is going to be useful to enhance our transparency and reporting of fulfillment. Thank you.
Thank you, Costa Rica. I would now like to invite Ecuador to make an introductory statement. The statement will be delivered by Ms. Irina Alexandra Barba Bustos, Director of Environment and Sustainable Development, Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Human Mobility. Ms. Barba Bustos, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Co-Chair. I have the honor of presenting a summary of the main findings of Ecuador's first national communication and its first BTR, documents that together reflect the country's most recent advances in climate action and transparency. Over the 2 decades, Ecuador has steadily strengthened its national reporting system. The country has moved from early inventory based on the revised 1996 IPCC guidelines to the full application of the 2006 guidelines together with the 2019 refinement. This evolution demonstrates a continuous improvement in methodological rigor, data, quality, and institutional capacity, and it reflects Ecuador's commitment to more robust and transparent climate reporting. Ecuador's national circumstances shape both its vulnerabilities and its opportunities for climate action. The country has a population of nearly 17 million people, mostly urban, and a territory that includes both continental and insular regions. Ecuador faces significant infrastructure challenges, including a high housing deficit and the presence of informal settlement, while depending heavily on hydroelectric power and road transport. At the same time, conservation remains a national priority. Ecuador maintains 76 protected areas, 21 water protection areas, and nearly 20% of its territory under formal conservation schemes, complemented by protective forest and diverse ecosystems. These conditions influence the country's climate risks, its adaptive capacity, and the design of its mitigation and adaptation strategies. the preparation of the 5th National Communication and the first BUR relied on a multiple-level institutional framework that strengthened the national coordination and governance. This framework includes political leadership through the Interinstitutional Committee on Climate Change, technical political oversight through the Project Steering Committee and the National Environmental Authority, and a technical operational level responsible for data collection, inventory preparation, and coordination with sectoral focal points. This structure improved the generation, validation, and consolidation of climate information and enhanced national capacities to meet the requirements of the ETF. Regarding greenhouse emissions, Ecuador's inventory for 2022 reports a little over 88,000 kilotons of CO2 equivalent. The energy sector remains the largest contributor, followed by land use and land use change, agriculture, waste, and industrial processes. CO2 is the dominant gas that, with methane and nitrous oxide, contributing smaller shares. Over the long term, emissions have declined since 1994, largely due to the reduction in the energy sector, while the sectors have shown more stable or gradual trends. These patterns highlight the structural drivers of emissions and the importance of long-term mitigation efforts. The largest reporting cycle incorporates significant methodological improvements. Ecuador updated its global warming potentials according to the IPCC 5th Assessment Report, incorporated new categories such as waste incineration, open burning, and fluorinated substitutes for ozone-depleting substances, and improved national data disaggregation, particularly for livestock and historical waste estimates. The inventory also includes updated estimates for 2020 to 2022 and recalculations to maintain consistency across the full time series. Ecuador has also monitored progress towards its first NDC. For mitigation, the country tracks annual goals across energy, industrial processes, waste, and agriculture. The trajectory shows a compliance gap of around 1% for 2020, 2021, and 2022, and less than 0.5% in 2023, indicated that Ecuador is almost on track to meet its mitigation targets. In the land use sector, monitoring is based on a 2008 baseline and included both unconditional actions under a project called Pro-Amazonia and conditional actions under RED+ plan. Final estimates for this sector will be produced at the end of the NDC period. On adaptation, Ecuador has advanced across 6 priority sectors: water, natural heritage, agriculture, health, productive and strategic sectors, and human settlements. The country has strengthened natural heritage instruments, improved water security mechanism, integrated climate projections into infrastructure planning, and expanded adaptation criteria in territorial planning. These efforts reflect progress toward a more resilient development pathway and demonstrates that the integration of climate considerations into national and local planning processes. Between 2021 and 2023, Ecuador received $746 million in climate-related support. More than half of this funding was directed to mitigation, over a third to adaptation, and the remainder to cross-cutting initiatives. The energy sector received the largest share, followed by cross-cutting interventions, human settlements, and natural heritage.
Despite this support, Ecuador faces significant financial needs to advance its climate commitments, particularly those associated with the conditional scenario of the first NDC and the implementation of the transparency framework under the Article 13 of the Paris Agreement. Many of these needs extend through 2036 and depend on sustained international cooperation. Ecuador submitted its first biennial transparency report in December 2024, and it is currently undergoing the technical expert review. The process has identified several capacity building needs, including approved QA/QC procedures, readiness for Article 6 cooperative approaches, long-term modeling tools, methodologies for estimating cost and co-benefits of mitigation measures, and stronger technical capacities for vulnerability assessment and climate hazard projections. This concludes the summary. We are ready to answer your questions, and for that I count on the remote support of my colleagues from the Ministry of Environment and Energy. I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ecuador. I would now like to invite Mexico to make an introductory statement. This statement will be delivered by Ms. Jostny Alili Alarcon Gonzalez, Director of Bilateral Cooperation. Ms. Alarcon Gonzalez, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, colleagues, and good morning, colleagues that are joining us online. Mexico welcomes this opportunity to engage in our first time in this facilitative dialogue to share our experience. Mexico reaffirms its strong commitment to the Paris Agreement and its enhancing transparency framework, a fundamental element for building trust and enhancing collective action. Our first BTR provides a comprehensive overview of our progress, as well as challenges we face implementing of our climate actions. In 2029, national gross emissions were 11% below the baseline, and in 2022, emissions were 8% below the baseline to keep Mexico on track to achieve its emission reduction targets. On adaptation, we built and updated our information from our first adaptation communication. Our focus were reducing vulnerability with climate justice and social equity perspective, identifying structural conditions that make Mexico highly vulnerable to climate change, and promoting adaptation strategy and measures. We find also key challenges such as the need to mainstream adaptation and the urgent need to develop adaptation indicators. On finance, Mexico provided about $4.4 million, and we received $235.9 million, and we identified sustainable finance gap of about $97 billion. On technology development and transfer, Mexico received support for 5 projects. At the same time, Mexico has identified the need for additional support for 3 projects, particularly in key strategic areas such as clean energy, transport technology, industrial processes, waste management, and circular economy. Also, agriculture and land use and digital monitoring systems such as the MRV. On capacity building, Mexico has provided support of 39 projects and activities and has also benefited from 71 capacity building initiatives covering areas such as technical training, including agriculture, waste and water management, and energy systems, strengthening local community capacities through training for rural and local communities and participation in environmental programs, education and awareness, including environmental education initiatives, and broader public engagement on climate action. Our country underscores the strategic integration of gender equity, intersectionality, and human rights across all the 7 sectors of the BTR, including national circumstances and institutional arrangements, mitigation adaptation, technology cooperation, and capacity building, and the future improvement that we have to do. We emphasize that the scrutiny issues themes are essential to ensuring our climate policy are inclusive, equitable, and effective, enabling us to address the differentiated impacts of climate change while we are strengthening social resilience and delivering sustainable development outcomes for all. At the same time, Mexico acknowledged that implementation challenges remain. This includes structural constraints in sectors such as energy, the need to strengthen infrastructure and planning capacities, and the ongoing challenge of improving the availability of disaggregated data. Along these efforts, Mexico has continued to strengthen its climate policy framework. Our updated NDC 3.0 reflects an evolution toward a more integrated and forward-looking approach, linking mitigation, adaptation, and our new loss and damage component. We also added cross-cutting issues and means of implementation with a single framework, while maintaining long-term vision toward net zero emissions by mid-century. Our NDC also enhanced transparency by presenting targets in absolute terms and adopted an economy-wide scope, ensuring greater clarity, compatibility, and accountability in tracking progress across all sectors of the economy. Mexico remains to continue improving its transparency framework and learning from the process, and we look forward to constructive exchange experience of knowledge and remain at your disposal to address any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mexico. With this, we conclude the introductory statements and we move to the second part of the FMCP, the combined questions and answers. I would now like to open the floor for questions from parties. I will collect a number of questions from parties before inviting the delegates from Argentina, Chile, Costa Rica, Ecuador, Uruguay, and Mexico to respond. As a reminder, kindly begin by indicating which party or parties under the FMCP your question is directed to. I encourage you to be concise and brief. And with that, I open the floor. I would like to give the floor to Saudi Arabia. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and congrats to all parties as well for submitting their first BTR. So I have two questions. The first is for Uruguay. So in Uruguay's NDC relies significantly on emissions intensity indicators associated with agriculture or agricultural production. Could Uruguay share its experience in balancing emissions reductions with the need to maintain agricultural productivity and food production objectives? And my second question is for Mexico. But before my questions, allow me to congratulate Mexico on its victory in the opening match of the FIFA World Cup yesterday. We wish your team continued success. So Mexico's presentation indicates that achieving the full 2030 mitigation target will require implementation beyond currently enacted measures. Could Mexico elaborate on the key actions, policies, and enabling conditions that it considers most critical for bridging the remaining gap towards achievement of its NDC target? Thank you.
Thank you, Saudi Arabia. I'd like now to give the floor to Canada. You have the floor.
Thank you, and congratulations to all parties on your first BTRs. This question is for our colleagues from Mexico. Can you please share any lessons from the development of Mexico's mitigation action catalog and how this tool informed the development of Mexico's NDC? Thank you.
Thank you, Canada. And now give the floor to Czechia. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Congratulations to all presenting parties for their first BTR circle. The question is for Chile. Czechia notes Chile's inclusion of black carbon as a tracked pollutant in its NDC, including the target to reduce energy sector black carbon emissions by 25% by year 2030 compared with year 2016 levels. Czechia would be grateful to learn more about Chile's planned next steps in this area, including how black carbon is reflected in its climate MRV system, sectoral mitigation plans, and the further quantification of policies and measures in time for its next BTR. Thank you.
Thank you, Czechia. I'll now give the floor to the Netherlands. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Congratulations, colleagues, for submitting your first BTR. I have a question for Mexico and for Argentina. For Mexico, we note that in your BTR that a trial program for an emissions trading scheme began in 2020 and ended in 2022. Can Mexico elaborate on the status of the ETS, and can you indicate what the expected impact of the ETS is? And for colleagues of Argentina, we note that there were no expected impacts of PAMs or projections reported, but you did indicate that there are plans to do this in your third BTR. Can you elaborate on your plans and the challenges that you face in order to be able to report on expected impacts and projections? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Netherlands. I'll now give the floor to the European Union. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, delegates. The EU would like to congratulate Argentina, Chile, Costa Rica, Ecuador, Uruguay, and Mexico for their comprehensive statement they made today. Thank you. And of course, congratulations for finalizing this first round with the BTR. You've all depicted in your BTR your institutional architecture, and including national climate change coordination bodies, regulatory instruments. Could you elaborate on how, over time, you managed to progressively strengthen your capacity and retaining expertise over successive administrations? Thank you.
Thank you to the European Union for your question, to all parties within the panel. So with that, we'll move to, we'll close the first set of questions and we'll move to our panel of parties under the FMCP. All colleagues, I'll give you a few minutes. Please let me know when you are ready to address any of the questions. Chile, you have the floor.
Thank you. I want to request a colleague is online, is Kevin Basoa. He answered to take care about the black carbon.
Of course.
Hello,
Please.
everyone. Good afternoon. Can you hear me well? I think so.
Good afternoon. Yeah, we hear you very well. Go ahead.
Great, great. Okay, well, thank you very much for the question for the colleague of Czechia. As they mentioned, we have some targets regarding black carbon emissions. It was like a long journey to include that into our commitments, but it's really strong right now and is following from our intended national determined contribution to the third NDC that we are presenting just last year, and how we include this in our regulation is basically we establish our GHG system to include black carbon emissions, and we have like the accountability for this in each period of the update of the national GHG inventory. With that, we also take advantage of our projection system that is also including black carbon emissions. So to that, we elaborate some mitigation policies that include in some way black carbon reductions. The easy part for us is mostly of our GHG emissions come from energy combustion or fuel combustion, sorry. So black carbon emissions are mainly coming from that. But we have some troubles or challenges regarding wood burning into the for heating purposes. So that is the main part of our challenge right now, because the wood burning is not that an issue for CO2 emission or GHG emissions. So we need to come with some plans to elaborate on how we mitigate the black carbon regarding that source. But since Chile has a lot of troubles regarding atmospheric pollutions, we have some decontamination plants along all the south and central Chile that in a way serve to enhance technology or implement some actions to diminish the use of wood for heating purposes, or changing technology with high standards for these stoves. So for that, with that we build some commitment, that the one that Czechia mentioned, and also we have some decarbonization strategies to diminish the use of diesel, for example, in some off-road machinery. That is the main action that we are now implementing, but still it's a difficult thing to address, because it's still uncertain. We know that black carbon is a problem, but to have a good accountability of this is also a challenge for all the countries. So we keep going on that. We wanted to extend this commitment to other short-lived climate forces, but at this point we only focusing on black carbon, and with methane also regarding GHG and his part as a short-lived climate forces. I hope that this clarifies a little bit more about our commitment regarding black carbon.
So now Camila talk about the European Union question.
Thank you, Anna, and good afternoon, dear expert and parties. So regarding the EU question, it is a big challenge for our countries to have continuity in the expertise we gain with the preparation of each report. For this, it is, we have mentioned this before maybe, it is very important that how we use the JEF projects. So we hire consultants that work within the ministries. So with this, we build capacity within the ministries, and then when there is the capacity of the country to hire some of these consultants as public people, then we that capacity remains in time. And also, it is very important for us to try to have continuity within the different GEF projects. So within the BUR projects, and also the CIVIC project has been very useful for us to increase our national capacities within our ministries, and also have continuity of expertise. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chile. I'll now give the floor to Mexico. You have the floor.
Thank you. I would like to request the floor for Ms. Fabiola Ramirez, that it's online.
Please, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I want to grateful with the answer, but with the question for Arabia Saudita, Canada, Netherlands, and Union Airport. So we are asking about an answer for the Arabia Saudita and Canada.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the question. First, we want to start talking a little bit about more regarding how we construct this catalog of different mitigation policies and different measures. We made a cross-sector exercise and we involve a lot of experts and universities in this exercise. At the end, we sum all the different options of mitigations, we end up with 185 different options. And then we narrow it to 151 different measures that are necessary in order to reach our NDC goals. And well, we have different measures in all economic sectors. And we managed to catalog these different measures in order of the probability of occurrence or the likelihood of the technology being available for us. And at the end, in terms for reaching the NDC, we have to do like all the possible measures that we have discovered in the whole sectors. We have in Mexico three major sectors that are first the electricity generation. One of the major measures that we have to accomplish in order to reach the goals is to increase the incorporation of renewable energies into the energy matrix of Mexico. And the second part is to work in restoration of forest ecosystems and sustainable forest management. We have to increase our absorptions levels, and the three main sectors is transport. In Mexico, the first source of emissions is transport, actually the private vehicles. So we are working in two different areas here. One is the technology, and we are driving the electromobility a lot, and also implementing this new behavior change in terms to reduce the use of private vehicles. So it's more or less how we are being constructing our mitigation catalog, and each measure has to have this this increase, because we have to do a lot of work in all the sectors, but in major, these are the major challenges that we have in order to achieve our goals.
For the ETS question, we are in the implementation with the rules of the ETS, so that rules were being a big challenge, but we are working with the whole industrial sector, power generation, and for the sector of oil and gas. So we are looking for to work on a totally ETS on the end of the 2026 or at the beginning of the 2027 years. Thank you for your questions.
Thank you very much, Mexico. I'll now give the floor to Ecuador.
Thank you very much, Co-Vice Chair. I would like to address the general question from the EU. Paul from my team will remotely address that question. Thank you so much.
Good morning, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you very clearly.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Vice Chair of the SBI, for giving me the floor. First, I would like to congratulate the all parties that submitted the first BTR. And regarding the question of the EU delegate, well, from Ecuador, restraining climate change governance in Ecuador requires consolidated robust institutional framework that ensures continuity of policies, plans, and technical processes beyond political transitions and changing government administrations. This can be achieved by reinforcing the role of the Interinstitutional Committee of Climate Change, strengthening coordination among sectoral ministries, decentralized autonomous governments, academia, private sector, and civil society, and ensuring that the climate change objectives remain integrated international and territorial development planning instruments. Institutional sustainability should be supported through formal coordination protocols, clear mandates, and mechanisms for preserving institutional memory. In parallel, about capacity building, efforts should focus on developing permanent technical capacities with public institutions, particularly in climate change transparency, greenhouse inventories, mitigation and adaptation planning, climate finance, and monitoring, reporting, and verification systems. Special attention should be given to strengthening the management exchange and use of information through the National Climate Change Registry, promoting standardized procedures, interoperable information system, and regular knowledge sharing among institutions. Enhancing the RNCC is a central platform for climate change information management, will improve data quality, transparency, decision-making, and coordination across sectors, while ensuring the technical knowledge and historical information remain accessible despite staff turnover and institutional change. These actions will contribute to the effective implementation of Ecuador's NDC and long-term climate commitments. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And now I will give the floor to Costa Rica.
Thank you. In relation to the question from the delegate of the European Union regarding governance, we have we have a figure of governance with the main ministries, which are the leaders of the key sectors regarding climate change and public policy in general. This committee is already active, and it is going to be the basic articulation space with the other ministries regarding our NDC monitoring and also the action plan for our long-term strategy. Also, regarding capacity building, as Costa Rica is facing already a graduation as OECD country in the next 2 years, as we expected, we are developing a capacity building program for a transition phase, which we are aiming not only for the Directorate of Climate Change personnel, but for all the key public sector institutions, since we need to develop a higher capacity in-house to prepare the national inventory of greenhouse emission gases, and also the NDC and the rest of the public policy instruments on climate change. We are aiming for our partners in the public sectors to understand that the climate agenda and the MRB and reporting in general is not only a task for the Ministry of Environment, but is a general task and strategic also for our government and for our stakeholders in the public and private sector and civil society. We have the CINAMEC, which is the National Metric System for Climate Change, but we identified the need to have a more flexible tool for us to keep the monitoring on a monthly basis with our partners in the government and the private sector. So we are working with NDC Partnership and UNDP in the development of this tool so that we could keep and have a working plan with each one of our partners in the public sector and the stakeholders of the private sector also. So what I mean is that we are establishing a network based on the articulation and coordination, starting with the Directorate of Climate Change, designed for each of those stakeholders to be involved in the process, but also to have a well-monitored and evaluated participation and tracking of each one goals and activities regarding NDC. The NDC and the action plan of the long-term strategy, so that for the next BTR to come, we expect to be much easier to develop the whole process, since it was hard during the first BTR, and we have a lot of lessons learned from that. Thank you.
Thank you, Costa Rica. I'll now turn to the other parties, if they are ready to respond. I'll first go back to Mexico. So Mexico, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, facilitator. We forgot to respond EU questions, so please, could we also take the floor for PhD Fabiola?
Fabiola, you have the floor with us online.
Yes, thank you. And I'm sorry for not respond to the Junior Europe. So
Just completing the answer that in our NDC, we have goals and measures in the whole sectors of the economy. We also are working very closely, and we are changing our institutional arrangement and our laws and arrangement in order to first sensibilize all the sectors in terms of what it means, their emissions, the level of transparency that the engagement transparency framework are asking us, and then to make them involved in all the process, because of course it's not one institution goal, it's a country goal. So what we are working now is in first having this institutional arrangement for having the most accurate information for activity data and emissions, and then to according to all the efforts in the different sectors and their responsibilities, to engage all the private and the public sectors into having a transparency into their measures, into the progress, and it's how we are been working. It's a big challenge for Mexico, but we are trying to keep the good work on that, and now we have discussions and working sessions with all the 8 sectors of the economy that are included in our NDCs.
Thank you very much, Mexico, for going back to address the question from the EU. And now we'll give the floor to Uruguay. You have the floor.
Thank you, co-facilitator. Regarding the Saudi Arabia's question, Uruguay's primary economic activity is cattle farming. The evolution of methane emissions have been closely linked to emissions from enteric fermentation, and in particular to annual variations in the national cattle herd. While beef production increased during 1990 and 2022 period, methane emissions from the cattle sector remained relatively stable, especially in recent years. This trend suggests an increase in productivity, among other factors, to significant improvements in the productive and reproductive efficiency of Uruguay's livestock sector. As a result, there has been a substantial reduction in the emissions intensity of the country's cattle production systems. These achievements have been supported through the promotion and adoption of good livestock management practices under a range of projects implemented in Uruguay with financial support from the Adaptation Fund and the CHEF. These initiatives have contributed to strengthening the resilience, efficiency, and productivity of livestock production systems, particularly those based on natural grasslands, while also supporting the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions intensity. It should also be noted that these impacts The impacts of these measures become evident over the medium term, given that livestock production is based on biological processes. Consequently, the effects of public policies on greenhouse gas emissions are gradual and materialize progressively over time. Regarding the EU question on institutional arrangements, Uruguay. In Uruguay, the National Climate Change Response System was established in 2009 as the national coordination body supported by its corresponding regulatory framework. Several working groups operate under this system and are responsible for preparing the different reports submitted to the Convention. It is within this framework that all actions related to climate change are discussed, coordinated, and decided. The different sectoral institutions, particularly the Ministry of Agriculture and Energy, allocate dedicated human resources within their respective ministries to participate in these working groups. These technical staff members contribute to the coordination, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation of sector-specific action and policies, ensuring national engagement and continuity in the decision-making process. The establishment of the Ministry of Environment, which oversees the National Directorate for Climate Change, further strengthens this institutional framework. The leadership and technical support provided by the National Directorate for Climate Change is maintaining and coordinating these working groups and have been essential for strengthening interinstitutional capacities to meet the requirements of the enhanced transparency framework. In addition, the support received through CHEF-funded projects for the preparation of the biennial transparency reports, as well as through projects implemented under the Capacity Building Initiative for Transparency, have been instrumental in ensuring the continuity of a critical mass of technical experts and teams. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Uruguay. I'll now give the floor to Argentina. You have the floor.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Chair. First of all, the question of this from the Netherlands. Thank you for your question. And regarding the policies, actions, and measures, and in this requirement was covered by the flexibility that, as the Netherlands explained, was applied in the BTR1 by Argentina, because there were some limitations to comply with the requirement in the necessary timeframes due to limitations we have on resources and national circumstances. There are many efforts currently to address these reporting gaps that are centralized in our national climate information system, where we work to continue to develop the necessary methodologies. The main challenges related to these constraints are, as I said, in terms of time, staff, and technical capacities for its development. And to address these requirements, we have some other gaps that are the development of estimation models, the articulation with the organisms that have the information and that can give us that information periodically, applying scenarios appropriately and to the national circumstances. So these challenges require sustained technical staff and financial support to maintain a new model of Argentina's climate information system to produce this kind of estimations. And while this development is envisioned to be part of the national system of climate change information in future cycles, particularly given the need to generate estimates and estimated future reductions compatible with the national GHG inventory, which are subject to methodological improvements over in every cycle. And this leads me to the following question of the EU regarding the capacity, how we strengthen capacity and expertise is retained over different administrations. And here, while Argentina has a strong system that has and has worked on improving it over the years. And here are two fundamental aspects. One regarding the technical team that elaborates the reports, and the other one is the institutional arrangements to interact with other areas of the government. So first of all, regarding the technical team, and every report since the BUR3 is developed within a technical team that works in the climate area related area. And even with an important amount of turnover, it is possible to maintain a team with a proper technical capacity that is in continuous learning. But yes, there is an system, but the existence of that team is substantial as the know-how is inside the government, and that is one of the lessons learned over the years, that is key to have the know-how inside. And, well, preserving this institutional knowledge built over the years is also maintained through documentation and safeguarding information and methods that are developed so that we can preserve the gained experience over the cycles, and especially in the context of high turnover of technical staff, as I just said. And well, this is also synergic with the increased need to document transparently and show more detailed information. And in this regard, also, international support for transparency was highly relevant through the support of Argentina. Through the support, Argentina was able to prepare and submit the report, the BTR, in time, given all the challenges involving the transition from BURs to BTRs. And also the capacity building activities received have been essential for our country because they allowed us to increase the transparency of the information reported, improving methodologies, and enhancing both quality and quantity of data. Considering that this was the first time reporting in accordance with the requirements of the MPGs and the CRT and CTF formats. However, it's important to highlight that we still experience some challenges in meeting our reporting requirements, which makes it indispensable to continue having international support. Now, on the second aspect that I was mentioning, the institutional arrangements, the climate action is not elaborated in the climate area. Argentina has a law that passed in 2019, the law on national adaptation and mitigation, that ratifies international commitments assumed and strengthens the national and subnational climate actions by establishing minimum standards to guarantee them. And the law also institutionalizes a cabinet that, as national governance body, with all relevant areas for a coordinated and agreed design of climate action. And finally, within this framework on the mentioned law and national cabinet, Argentina prepares and validates all its reports and commitments that are later submitted to the UNFCCC. And within that framework, it also develops national plans in order to guide the national and medium and long-term actions. Thank you. Thank you for the questions.
Thank you, Argentina, and thank you to our panel of FMCP countries for addressing the questions. We'll go back to our delegates and we'll see if we have any more questions from the floor. I see a request from Malawi. Malawi, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair, and congratulations to our colleagues for the submission of the first BTR and also for undergoing this important process. As a developing country parties, I think that's very commendable that you went ahead to submit the first BTR. So I have two questions, one to Mexico. We noted in the submission, but also in the presentation that the emissions increased between 2020 to 2022, which in the NDC tracking chapter, it resulted into reduced emission reductions. So the question is, what were the main reasons for that trajectory, and what are the efforts which are being made to address, if at all there were some challenges, to ensure that Mexico is able to meet the climate change targets as outlined in our NDC. The second question, this gather clothes all the parties. It has been noted that there are quite substantial number of areas of improvements recommended from the technical expert review teams. Just an example, Argentina, we see 41 areas of improvements. So what efforts are you doing as parties to address these areas of improvements, considering that also BTR2 is around the corner? We are in the year where we are supposed to submit the second BTR. And the question extends to say, do you have any additional support required for you to adequately address those areas of improvement? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Malawi. Now I'll give the floor to South Africa.
Thank you, Chairperson. My question is to Chile. I would like to congratulate all the parties for submitting their BTRs and also undergoing this FMCP, and also to congratulate Mexico for hosting the World Cup and winning last night. My question to Chile, could they kindly elaborate on what type of climate-related support are included in the Chapter 5, which says support received and provided by Chile to meet its related climate change? This refers to, if we would like to know if this refers to the financial contribution, capacity building, technological transfer, or other forms of assistance that may be provided to other parties. So I'd like to get clarification on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, South Africa. Now I'll give the floor to the United Kingdom. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try to be brief with my question. This one's for Costa Rica. In your presentation, you mentioned as part of the Implementation Acceleration Plan, you are working to strengthen your coordination mechanisms. Can you share what these are and some successes from implementing the changes? Thank you.
I see no more requests for the floor. So at this point, we still have, we collected questions from Malawi, South Africa, and the UK. So the questions were addressed to Mexico, Chile, Costa Rica, and there's also an overarching question to all parties. Given the limited time that we have, maybe we'll move to first give the parties the opportunity to respond to the directed questions, and potentially we leave the general question that was directed to all parties to be answered through a written answer to Malawi, if that's fine. So with that, I'll give you colleagues a couple of minutes. Just let me know when you're ready, and I'll give you back the floor. Now, I'd like to give the floor to Mexico.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the question, Malawi, and thank you for the congratulations to the delegate from South Africa. We would like also to share the floor with PhD Fabiola. Thank you.
Fabiola, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the question, Malawi. First, we want to start explaining that we have changed the way that we are taking track of our NDCs. For this first BTR, what we see is the difference between a business as usual scenario and the different emissions. But now we have changed for the actual NDC of Mexico. We have changed the way that we are making track of our goals, and now we have goals in terms of net emissions and across all the sectors. And the reason that in Mexico we see an increase of emissions and there's so a decrease in the difference between the emissions and the baseline or the business as usual scenario was because we were recovering from the pandemic, and in 2021 we still have these effects of the COVID pandemic, and in 2022 we start to reopen all the activities and the economical developments, but now we are tracking not in terms of this business as usual line or a scenario, but in terms of net and absolute emissions for the whole country. So we have been doing our projections and our new both WEM and WAM scenarios that we are going to present in the next BTR, and we are having the track of our goals in terms of gross absolute emissions.
Yeah, and in order to answer the tracking NDC for the BTR1, in 2021, national gross emissions were 11% below the baseline. And in 2022, emissions were 8% below the baseline. To keep Mexico on track to achieve its emission reduction target. So that is the information for the NDC tracking in the BTR1. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mexico. I'll now give the floor to Costa Rica, followed by Chile. Costa Rica.
Thank you, Chair. Just to be sure, the effort to address the areas of improvement is a general question, right? Or is not?
So we'll go for the directed question from the UK, and the general question that was raised by Malawi, the question will be shared from the Secretariat to all parties, and we will take a written response and post
so just to answer the one from UK. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the congratulations and for the delegate of UK. If I understand right, you meant about the mechanism of coordination. Is that right? Yes? It was referred to the mechanism of coordination. The question from UK, right?
UK?
Yeah. Sorry. Yes.
Sorry, just to confirm, yes, it is.
Yeah, thank you. My apologies. I have to say that BTR was a very, very hard experience since it was quite different and it was a challenge for us because our metric system was not working as we would like to. Collecting all the information was very, very hard, and all the charts and the whole process of learning how to do it. So it was huge for us, and we learned, among other things, that first of all, we needed to change the structure so that all the process, including coordination, would be easier for us to face. So instead of having 12 technical areas, we changed the mitigation chapter to the sectors of the IPCC, and we changed the adaptation chapter to the same 6 axis we have in our national adaptation policy and plan. And this is important regarding the coordination because this is making easier for us the implementation process, and it will make easier for us also to coordinate the next BTR. And specifically regarding coordination mechanisms, we realize that we keep working as silos, and now we have an agenda of joint working, to create joint working agendas with our key partners, for example, the National Meteorological Institutes, because the institute develops the BTR, but we are the focal point of the UFCCC. So this is a kind of complex arrangement because we have restrictions of personnel, but we are facing this situation enhancing the comprehension of our partners of the national climate change agenda I mentioned before. So we are creating or strengthening the previous existing governance environments we had, and also we are developing these working plans, which means that periodically we are meeting so that the coordination expecting to happen is actually happening. So it's nothing new, but we are not just assuming that we are supposed to coordinate. So this is pretty obvious, but since we are all very busy, we just kept, in the past, we just kept working and getting in touch when needed as an urgency, but now we are establishing a working plan and it includes all those key heads of the sectors, the ministries, and our scientific institution within the ministry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Costa Rica. I'll now give the floor to Chile, but before that, I just wanted to let everyone know that we have a hard stop at 6, so I would ask you if you can please brief and limit it to 2 to 3 minutes, please.
Okay, thank you. Javiera Lecourt will answer the South Africa's question about the Chapter 5. She is online.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for the question. I'd like to take a moment to clarify what we are doing in the Chapter 5 in needed and support are needed, and also to be transparent about where we stand more broadly. Chapter 5 is in our BTR 2 cover support needed and received across the 3 dimensions: finance, technology, and capacity building. All these responding to the Articles 9, 10, and 11 of the Paris Agreement and the reporting through the CTF tables, to the 6 and the 30. On finance, we are tracking climate flows received through bilaterals and multilateral channels, disaggregated by sectors, instrument types, and thematic areas. For needs, we are working with sectoral ministries through a structured consultation process, cross-referencing identified gaps against our NDCs and long-term climate strategy. On technology, we are documenting both transfer support, received, and technology needs, covering hard and soft technology across priority sectors, drawing in our exciting sectoral plans. On capacity building, we are reporting support received, including through the CV2 project, and the broader needs identified through the multi-levels process that includes national ministries, regional governments, and private sectors actors. I also want to share some of the concrete steps we are taking to improve data collection and reporting quality. We have developed an improvement program designed to strengthen how we capture information from reported sectors. As part of this, we have designed a synthetic data collection tool, a structured spreadsheet, tailored to be different sectoral reporting entities with definitions fully aligned to UNIF CCC guidance. This has been a deliberate effort to move away from ad hoc reporting and towards a standardized and reproducible process. Beyond that, we are advising the implementation of an integrated needs reporting system. The goal is to allow us to estimate financial, technological, and capacity building needs in a more systematic and evidence-based way, so that we report in the CTF tables in not just a snapshot, but something we can track and update across reporting cycles. We are facing a lot of process. We want to improve our process to report this information, because we believe that all this information in finance, technology, and capacity building, it's very important to the implementation of our action plans. So thank you.
Thank you very much. 30 seconds. I'll now give the floor to Argentina.
Yes, thank you very much. In the interest of time, I give the floor to Tamara Lignasi, in charge of the National GAG Inventory of the BTR. She's online.
Thank you, Malawi, for your question, and good afternoon to everyone on the floor. The areas of improvement that the TER identified are prioritized in Argentina in our planned improvements for future reports, and they are incorporated in the improvement plan together with other lines of work that were identified by the national team. And these areas of improvement were initially classified as short, medium, and long term to address them in the best way, considering both their relation to mandatory requirements and their complexity. Some of them require minor revisions of methods or increased transparency in explanations and documentations in the national inventory document. And the medium to long-term improvements are more of a support-related requirement that maybe are envisioned as part of future projects with support to develop improved data or improved emission factors. And in this sense, we have some experience with, for example, CBIT and ICAT projects, which provided support in the past developing new categories for the NGAGI and Tier 2 emission factors, as well as providing support for the continuity of the technical team, as previously mentioned in other questions. So lastly, Argentina is also considering the TER recommendations and suggestions when developing the new sections that might be required in future BTRs to specifically address the improvements that they identified and to explain how we are taking them into account in our improvement plans. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Argentina. And would like to thank the delegates for your questions and our panel for their responses. Delegates and colleagues, I would like to extend my thanks and congratulations all of you for actively engaging in this positive and fruitful discussions. And at this point, I would now like to suspend the session and resume tomorrow morning with the fourth and final part of the FMCP. We will meet in this room at 10 o'clock in the morning for the FMCP for Bhutan, China, Maldives, Uzbekistan, Georgia, Ghana, and Mauritius. The session at Kenya and Mauritius. The session is adjourned.